the secret parliament of crowns and coins.
It began with a gathering no citizen was ever meant to witness, a midnight assembly of Europe's most powerful monarchs, convened not in a palace or council chamber, but in a secluded estate hidden behind forests and fortified walls.
No herald announced their arrival. No record marked their presence.
Yet inside that quiet hall, lit only by lanterns and guarded by men sworn to silence, decisions were made that would shape the continent's financial destiny for generations.
To understand why these rulers met in absolute secrecy, we must return to an era trembling on the edge of upheaval. Economies strained under the weight of war debts. Trade networks faltered as rivalries deepened. Currencies fluctuated wildly, leaving merchants uncertain and citizens anxious.
Each kingdom faced its own crisis, yet all shared a single fear, that the collapse of one realm could drag the others into ruin.
Stability was no longer a domestic concern, it was a continental necessity.
The first reveal begins with the unspoken purpose of the assembly. The monarchs had gathered to form a secret pact, a financial alliance that would allow them to manipulate the flow of currency, credit, and trade without the interference of parliaments, guilds, or foreign rivals.
They believed that only through discreet cooperation could they prevent Europe from descending into economic chaos. But their solution required shadows, not sunlight.
Then came the second beat. The rulers established what became known, in whispers, as the Parliament of Crowns and Coins. It operated without charters or seals, bound only by mutual interest and the fear of mutual collapse. Through coded correspondence and covert envoys, they agreed to coordinate borrowing, stabilize exchange rates, and intervene in markets when needed. On paper, it was a safeguard. In practice, it concentrated immense power into the hands of a few, hidden from the public whose lives depended on their decisions. But even in its earliest days, the pact contained fault lines. Some rulers sought cooperation only to strengthen their own bargaining positions. Others hid their true financial conditions, hoping to secure favorable terms from allies unaware of their struggles. And beneath every diplomatic exchange lay a question none dared speak aloud: how long could secrecy shield them from consequences? As the secret parliament exerted its influence, small but unmistakable shifts rippled through Europe. Interest rates aligned across borders with uncanny precision. Currency crises resolved themselves with suspicious speed. Trade disruptions vanished before they could escalate. To merchants, the changes felt like providence. To financiers, like unseen hands adjusting the scales. And yet, behind the calm facade, the Parliament of Crowns and Coins was already grappling with tensions that would soon threaten to expose the alliance and unravel the stability it fought to preserve. The Parliament's influence widened as covert agreements tightened between the crowns. For a time, the plan seemed flawless. Exchange rates settled. Trade routes steadied. Even kingdoms once paralyzed by debt found temporary relief as coordinated interventions masked their weaknesses. But beneath this manufactured calm, unease spread through the financial undercurrents of Europe. Not everyone believed in miracles, and miracles were exactly what the markets appeared to be witnessing. As the reveal deepened, a small circle of royal advisors noticed troubling patterns. Currency values rose or fell at moments too perfectly timed to be coincidence. Loans between kingdoms appeared suspiciously synchronized. Even crises that should have unfolded naturally: failed harvests, disrupted supply lines, military overstretch, seemed to evaporate before they could threaten the continent. These anomalies pointed to a force operating beyond public institutions, beyond official treaties, beyond the visible machinery of governance. Whispers circulated through merchant guilds that some group was orchestrating Europe's financial rhythm. Money changers observed sudden corrections in markets they knew should have taken weeks to stabilize. Financiers in distant capitals reported receiving identical directives from officials claiming different motivations. A pattern emerged: whenever instability threatened, invisible hands intervened. The Parliament of Crowns and Coins was no longer merely guiding the economy. It was controlling it. Inside the secret assembly, conflict took shape. Rulers who had entered the pact reluctantly grew alarmed at how much influence the alliance granted their more powerful counterparts. Smaller kingdoms complained that interventions favored wealthy realms while draining the resources of weaker ones. Some feared the pact had shifted from a defensive measure to a tool of quiet domination. Dissatisfaction grew, whispered first in private chambers, then in tense midnight discussions that unraveled the illusion of unity. Meanwhile, a new danger emerged beyond the monarch's awareness. A group of scholars and archivists, tasked with reviewing ancient fiscal records for an unrelated inquiry, uncovered discrepancies that should not have existed, documents showing coordinated financial movements long before any official treaties were signed.
Their findings suggested a pattern of manipulation that stretched back decades, perhaps even generations.
What they had discovered, unknowingly, was the early shadow of the Parliament itself. The conflict sharpened when one advisor leaked fragments of these findings to a merchant consortium. The information spread quietly but rapidly, sparking unease across financial hubs.
Questions reached royal courts demanding explanations. Some parliaments sought inquiries. Certain guilds refused to engage in transactions that showed signs of artificial manipulation. A structure built on secrecy now trembled under the weight of emerging scrutiny. For the first time, the Parliament of Crowns and Coins faced a threat it could not anticipate or control: exposure. The build-up reached a critical point when a prominent ruler, frustrated by perceived exploitation within the pact, threatened to withdraw entirely and reveal the alliance to the public. Their words sent shockwaves through the clandestine circle. If even one crown broke the silence, the entire system would collapse, markets would convulse, alliances would fracture, and every monarch involved would face accusations of deception.
The Parliament's veneer of strength began to crack. And with each fracture, Europe edged closer to a reckoning that secrecy could no longer prevent. The threat of exposure spread through the royal courts like a spark through dry timber.
Markets sensed the shift long before any proclamation was made. Exchange rates, once unnaturally steady, flickered with volatility.
Merchant guilds paused major contracts. Foreign financiers, ever attuned to the slightest tremor, began demanding higher guarantees for loans. The calm Europe had grown accustomed to did not merely fade, it evaporated. Inside the Parliament of Crowns and Coins, the conflict exploded into open confrontation. The monarch who threatened to withdraw was not alone.
Others, emboldened by fear or ambition, voiced their own grievances.
They accused wealthier crowns of engineering interventions that protected their interests while draining their allies' reserves. They condemned the secrecy that required deception not just of citizens, but of ministers, parliaments, and treasuries sworn to uphold the realm's welfare. What had begun as cooperation had mutated into quiet coercion. The most powerful rulers pushed back. They argued that without the Parliament, Europe would plunge into chaos.
War debts would resurface. Weak currencies would collapse. Rivalries long contained by discreet adjustments would burst into the open.
Their warnings carried a harsh truth: the pact had succeeded too well. Entire economies now depended on the invisible framework the Parliament had built.
Unraveling it would be as dangerous as maintaining it.
But unease had become distrust, and distrust began to open old wounds. Smaller kingdoms accused their wealthier counterparts of using secret interventions to pressure political decisions, shifting alliances, steering trade, influencing succession disputes.
Some even claimed their currencies had been deliberately weakened to secure favorable treaties. Whether true or not, the accusations revealed how deeply suspicion had taken root.
Outside the chambers of secrecy, the world stirred. Scholars analyzing trade data noticed irregularities that aligned perfectly with the rumored manipulations.
Bankers whispered that exchange movements once thought natural were now clearly orchestrated.
Even common citizens sensed that their rulers spoke with rehearsed precision whenever matters of finance arose. The Parliament's shadow had grown too large, too heavy, too visible. The build-up intensified when a coded letter, intended for one monarch, was intercepted by agents of a rival crown. The message outlined a coordinated intervention scheduled for the following month, one designed to stabilize a struggling currency before a crucial treaty negotiation. To the crown that intercepted it, the letter confirmed their deepest fear: the Parliament was no longer managing crises, it was engineering outcomes.
The revelation ignited fury.
The offended kingdom confronted its peers in a secret midnight gathering, denouncing the pact as an instrument of manipulation. Their ruler threatened not only withdrawal, but exposure to the public. They vowed to publish every coded message, every ledger entry, every concealed agreement they possessed.
Panic rippled through the alliance.
If even a fraction of their activities became public, markets across Europe would convulse.
Citizens would accuse their monarchs of betrayal. Parliaments would demand trials.
Rivals would exploit the collapse of trust. As tensions reached their peak, the Parliament of Crowns and Coins stood at the brink of self-destruction. The alliance created to preserve stability now threatened to unleash the very chaos it had been designed to prevent.
Europe hovered in a moment of fragile stillness, waiting for the revelation that would determine whether the pact would survive or shatter under the weight of its own secrets.
The revelation arrived with a force none of the monarchs could contain. Before dawn broke, the ruler who had threatened exposure fulfilled their vow. Couriers spread across major cities delivering sealed packets to parliaments, guild councils, universities, and merchant assemblies. Inside each packet lay fragments of the Parliament of Crowns and Coins, coded letters, synchronized loan agreements, records of hidden interventions.
By midday, the secret alliance was no longer secret. The climax unfolded in a wave of disbelief and fury.
Citizens who had endured years of unpredictability learned that their rulers had been shaping markets behind closed doors. Merchants realized that their profits and losses had not always been governed by skill, but by invisible agreements. Parliaments erupted in outrage, demanding explanations for treaties signed under conditions engineered by foreign crowns. Even loyal advisors felt betrayed, discovering that their own monarchs had concealed the truth from them.
Financial markets reacted with violent precision.
Exchange rates collapsed as confidence evaporated.
Bonds tied to monarchies implicated in the pact plummeted in value. Trade halted in several ports as buyers and sellers refused to transact until new rules were established. The very stability the Parliament had claimed to protect crumbled under the weight of exposure. Within the secret assembly, chaos reigned. Some monarchs denounced the whistleblower as a traitor.
Others accused their peers of orchestrating the crisis through arrogance and manipulation.
Allies turned on one another, each desperate to distance themselves from the scandal. Blame became a currency more volatile than any coin, traded rapidly as crowns fought to salvage their legitimacy.
Yet amid the turmoil, a path forward emerged not from the monarchs, but from the citizens and institutions they had sidelined. Merchant guilds, banking houses, and regional assemblies convened emergency councils. They demanded the creation of a transparent, collaborative financial framework, one that relied not on clandestine agreements, but on shared governance and open oversight. Their proposal gained momentum, fueled by the public's refusal to return to the shadows. The turning point came when several of the continent's largest kingdoms, recognizing the impossibility of restoring the old system, agreed to dissolve the Parliament of Crowns and Coins. In its place, they established a new Continental Monetary Council, operating with strict transparency requirements and rotating leadership to prevent dominance by any single crown. Exchange rates would be managed openly.
Interventions would require public approval. No ruler could shape markets alone.
The resolution spread gradually across Europe.
Markets stabilized. Citizens regained trust slowly, cautiously, but with newfound determination to hold their leaders accountable. The clandestine pact that once promised strength had revealed a deeper truth: stability built on secrecy is fragile, but transparency, though difficult, grants resilience. And the lesson reaches far beyond the borders of that forgotten era. Today, as global systems grow ever more entangled, the story of the hidden parliament reminds us that the greatest threat to stability is not volatility, but the belief that control can be maintained without accountability.